You finally defeat the goblin boss, and the dungeon falls quiet. In the corner of the room, a wooden treasure chest gleams with the promise of gold and magical loot. You reach out to open the heavy iron latch, but suddenly a jagged maw of razor-sharp teeth opens where the lock used to be, and a massive, acidic pseudopod reaches for your throat. Welcome back to the Ecological Bestiary, where we treat the Monster Manual like a field guide and apply real biology to fantasy worlds. Today, we are rolling for initiative against the ultimate dungeon crawler's nightmare, the Mimic. How does a predator evolve to look like a piece of furniture? And what real-world animals use this exact same ambush strategy? Joining the adventuring party today are my fellow nerds and nature lovers, Mike, Rachel, and Cassie. Mike, as our resident lore master, please start us off. What exactly does the book say about mimics?
The ideas are created by a crazy wizard that wants something to protect their hoard, protect their treasure, protect the gold. So they create the mimic. We see it in the underworld and an underdark type of scenario. We never see them come to the surface. But again, that's in our original lore of D&D, where it's always the dungeon crawl, right? And then we start to move into 2 and 3, where they start to develop the mimic a little bit more, where the mimic was just this kind of creature that blends in and adheres itself to a structure and then can change its shape and jump out. We see mimics start to have a little bit more of a personality, which is odd. They start to give them the understanding and even the ability to speak common at points of it. So they have a form of language and can understand a language. We see it go from things like an arm to a pseudopod to having the sticky surface to them, where there's descriptions where that they can change the shape, and then the blood vessels that they have can change to the texture of wood. So the descriptions start to get a little bit more clear, a little bit more clear, a little bit more clear. And then we make the jump to mimics are object clingers. And that becomes kind of important because we see mimics escaping into the open world, where now they're on the surface. They're no longer in the dungeon, and they're attaching to rocks, or they're attaching to the treasure chest that we always assume. Or even if you want to be the evil DM, every bit of gold is a separate mimic inside of a treasure chest. But then you start to see large mimics, so house-dwelling mimics. So a house is not a house, it's actually a mimic, which is unique. We have a rule change, and we have an interesting rule that shows up that categorizes a dead creature as an object. So now we're seeing mimics that can mimic a dead body, which becomes really interesting in the world of ecology and the science behind, like, where are these related to? Where we have an organism in this fantasy realm that is taking the shape and structure and acting like a dead creature, waiting for something to check the body or to check the animal as food.
The concept of a mimic then mimicking the character that it defeated. You're operating on levels beyond my capacity.
They do that, though? I mean, I think of that as doppelgangers and things like that.
Yeah, so the doppelganger can mimic them as living, right? They can take over their stats and their character traits while they're living, but as soon as the character dies, they become an object.
Wow.
Okay.
I don't know. That gets into like other concepts of humanity that we could dissect.
We're going to have a really kind of separate.
That sounds like a side quest.
Yeah.
As a forever DM, I have thrown out my fair share of mimics, and I do play a game on Monday nights. And my last campaign that I was playing, every single treasure chest I opened was a mimic. So I've had my fair share of them, and they're a really interesting thing. I think when utilized, they can be a game-changing monstrosity. You could be at so few hit points after the big bad, or so few hit points after all these tiny little battles. Well, I'm going through a dungeon crawl. I'm fine. I'm checking for traps. Originally, they were identified and used as traps, and that was kind of it. And now it's this whole stat block of a creature. But you have so few hit points at a point in the game, and all of a sudden you have this mimic. That could be the end of a creature. which is crazy. Or
Yeah, consumed whole.
Whoa.
I'm never opening a treasure chest.
All right.
Wow.
Well, should we roll our die for initiative to have our science facts, y'all? What did you all roll? I rolled a 5.
Oof. I've got
I got a
10.
7.
I got a 3.
Oh, no.
Dude, we are a bad party of
Yeah,
rollers.
this is not great initiative.
The bad guys are going first.
Yeah, absolutely.
What'd you get, Mike? You got a 10?
I got the
Sorry?
10. Yeah. So what I really see when I hear the mimic and I hear the we're using a pseudopod, we're using a tentacle and arm, we're using structures internally that are creating board-like appearance, and then blood vessels that change the texture of the skin and the pigmentation in the skin, and it's an ambusher and it's waiting till the last minute. I don't know if you're all thinking the same thing, but my brain goes cephalopod, right? Octopus. I'm going octopus here because you have so many of these, these animals that are, able to using tools. We see the one octopus, I'm gonna forget the name, that uses the shell, the coconuts, the shells to as armor and walks on two, right? And we see structure change in appearance of the skin. We see pigmentation changes, right? They're waiting in ambush, lashing out to connect with. And then at the same time, we identify as the mimics as being somewhat sentient and having that ability of communication and some form of communication and understanding. We're looking at octopi also, an octopus being intelligent as well and a problem solver. And I think that's the biggest thing with a mimic is it is a problem solver. How am I going to get food and lure things to me so I'm not out in the open? My soft, squishy, boneless body is going to be able to get as much food as possible, right? Ambush and wait, draw it in, appear, like everything. So my brain goes there with it.
All right. Nice. I think Rachel, you're next, right?
Yeah, my brain was kind of all over the place. I also thought octopus, and I immediately thought of that video. I don't know if you've seen it, of an octopus sleeping. And while it's sleeping, it's like going through, like we see so many images when we're asleep really fast consecutively. And as the octopus is dreaming, it's also seeing those really fast images, but it's in like from second to second, it's changing its appearance, both in texture and in color. And it's just remarkable. So I thought of that video immediately. But I really just thought of aggressive mimicry in general. And I did a little research I had no idea there were so many forms of mimicry. And I always thought of the classic, warning coloration or organisms mimicking scarier organisms. But I hadn't thought of like the traps that some organisms set through aggressive mimicry. And I learned so much about how predators use mimicry to lure prey in, like the deep sea anglerfish. And yeah, I just learned a lot about like the alligator snapping turtle and how it has a worm-like tongue to lure, and it keeps its mouth open so it lures prey in and then it closes its jaw. And I was really interested in seeing all these different real organisms that when I think of mimicry in nature, I think of it as a defensive mechanism to ward off predators, but I learned so much about how predators use mimicry to their advantage. So that's really where I went.
Yeah, I went much the same. And I started thinking, so mimicry, you think of like the classic viceroy butterfly mimicking a monarch so that, because monarchs are not palatable to birds and such. So it's just trying to pretend it's toxic when it's not actually, right? And then the other type of mimicry, the Mullerian mimicry, right? I suppose the Batesian mimicry, which I always forget those terms, but Mullerian being like that it's a bunch of toxic, they're all sort of toxic or have some sort of, and they're going to look similar. So there's like strength in numbers and more of a selective pressure on animals. But then I also came across the aggressive mimicry, which is like super cool with these lures and looking like things. And it made me think about predators in general, like their different strategies whether you're going to chase something. So like pursuit, which is a lot of energy, whether you're like a cheetah or you're, lions or wolves or whatever. And some of those, it's like they have a short burst of speed and they can go for like 10 seconds. If they don't catch in 10 seconds, they're done versus like stamina hunters, but it's all pursuit, right? Versus the, ambush predators, which are mostly still waiting. And then even these things that are completely like sedentary. But if you're going to be mostly sedentary, like what's going to attract things to you, right? So that's where that lure idea or having like something, some sort of like pheromone cue or something that pulls people in. I guess mimics in Dungeons and Dragons, they would have to be very strategic in where they reside. Like make sure there's goblins coming down that hallway from time to time or adventurers or what have you. What about you, Cassie?
I definitely went octopus on this one too. The second it was like it can take a different shape so that it could ambush, and there are bits and pieces of it though. If you look at the picture in D&D Beyond, it has this big like blue tongue sticking out, and immediately went Okapi there, which because I love them and they're my favorite. I have a copy sticker with a Okapi tongue like out on my computer right down that I'm staring at right now.
It's a prehensile tongue.
It is a prehensile tongue. So I thought that was interesting. And then I also felt with its ability, or I guess its inability to move, it's more sedentary than anything, was thinking coral a little bit, because coral don't move once they're adults. When they're babies, they kind of pop around a little bit. But as an adult, they kind of put a foot down and stay. And then they have the zooxanthellae that gives them their color, and bringing in different zooxanthellae could give them different colors. There are sometimes when they're heat stressed, they kick them out, and that's coral bleaching. And then they might grab different zooxanthellae back in, and they might change color. So I don't know that to add, but I'm totally on board with octopus. This thing screams octopus to me, especially with the texture changes.
Yeah.
It's pretty unique to cephalopods.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you also have what I really like too are the mimic flowers that are there to resemble like a female wasp. That is like, hey, I mean, that is lore of lores, right? That is, not just waiting in ambush for food, which I mean, technically, I guess we would see what the mimic is doing. It wants to eat, and it wants to consume. But we have these flowers that are luring in too, waiting in, here's this little dangling fruit, and there's the prey coming in, right?
Yeah, I was just really amazed at the use of color and how different organisms see different wavelengths or register different wavelengths of light, and how, like, I remember it reminded me of this nature documentary I watched like months ago where tigers, their colors are the way they are because their prey can't register the wavelength of, they actually camouflage into what their prey can see, which is crazy because when we think of tigers, they're this orange, they're so distinctive. But yeah, just it kind of made me like zoom out a little bit and think about the animal kingdom based on survival and how we're really like playing tricks a lot of the time. And I just think that's so fascinating. And there's so much to learn from it. Not just like, oh, that's a cool fact, but also like, wow, look at that adhesive. Like, how could we replicate that? Why is that organism behaving the way it is? And what can we learn? So anyway, that's my tangent.
Yeah, it's the difference between like camouflage just blending in, right, to disappear versus actually trying to look like something you're not for a strategic benefit, right? And then in terms of the changing color, the thing I've been thinking about is, have you ever seen cuttlefish in like an aquarium?
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen octopi, the nature documentaries changing color and everything, but like cuttlefish take it to another level with their like rippling color changes. I wonder even just like physiologically, how do they do that? It seems like it would cost a lot of energy or something.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it does. And as far as we know, color change has mostly to do with emotion and mood and more of that than like camouflaging. Although octopodes, I think is the appropriate, I don't know, who knows, plural of octopus, will do it for particularly to look like something else, particularly the mimic octopus, which, mimics.
Wait, are you saying that animals, just like human animals, wear mood rings?
Yes, on their bodies.
That's the best news I've heard all day long.
Is the mimic the mood ring of the D&D world?
Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's talk teenagers. Let's talk in this 2003 where teenagers are walking through the dungeon. They see a mood ring mimic. Wow. This is blowing my mind.
I love
See,
that
now
because
that
like
gives me an idea for like a custom item of the mood ring mimic. Like that just seems like
So cute.
such a fun little item.
I would buy it.
It
I
has
would
to be
definitely
sticky,
buy
though.
it.
It has to
Hey,
stick, yeah.
So along those lines, then we're talking about colors and we're talking about how their vision is and relying on scents and things like that. What do we think the mimic's primary sensory is? What are they using to wait and ambush their prey? We see eyes in pictures, but it's eyes that pop out of a chest. They're not open all the time in a lot of these pictures. So what are they using? Are they using pressure waves? Are they using
Whoa.
scent?
like
Are they using
electromagnetic
I was-
something maybe?
Yeah, I was like, they're sharks. They feel the electromagnetic sense.
have the ampulla?
I was also thinking touch because of their adhesive quality.
Mm.
So, yeah, I feel like that compounds into definitely touch if they're just sensing the world around them through what they're feeling.
Or maybe more like snake hearing. Because snakes don't hear, they don't have ears, but they do feel vibrations, and that's kind
Yeah.
of what they hear. That's
Well, would you call that hearing, or would you call that the sense of sound, or the sense of sound? Would you
what technically touch, I
touch?
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think a little bit about lyrebirds. Parrots get all the credit for doing the talking and the mimicking people, but lyrebirds are incredible sound mimics.
Huh.
And a treasure chest shouldn't make any noise, but if it can understand speech or maybe mimic speech to throw somebody off or lure somebody in.
You have a door. A door could be a mimic. You talk
Yeah.
from one side of it of, "Hi, come in here, help
Hey,
me."
help me.
Yeah, hey, grab
Did-
the door.
Yeah.
Do the lyrebirds mimic like prey? Like what are they trying to sound like? Other birds?
Other
Or-
things. They're everything from a chainsaw to a camera click to other species of birds they're incredible. And I don't know why they do it.
Google search says lyrebirds mimic sounds primarily to attract mates and defend territory.
Hmm.
So
They do a
and yeah, they
fantastic
can do
job.
That
human made
chainsaw would be
noises.
terrifying. And then what do you all think about the idea that the mimic has to take over an object and not a living thing? So where do you think, that falls? So we're talking about mimicry of plants and we're talking about mimicry of other animals, but where do we see mimicry of inanimate? I mean, we could look at the evolution where, with the peppered moths. As educators, how many times have we taught peppered
Oh my
moths?
God.
Right? And we're getting
Okay.
into the evolution of the species, but we're talking about an environmental change, right? Driving what they look like and how they function. So where are we seeing mimicry of inanimate?
I think that's more camouflage, right? And I know they're kind
Yeah.
of two different things, but inanimate organisms that are camouflaging are blending into their surroundings, which are potentially going to be inanimate objects, as opposed to then there are the like stick bugs and other organisms that blend into those aren't, I wouldn't call a tree, well, I wouldn't call it an
wouldn't call it
object.
inanimate.
Yeah, because that's interesting too. Because when we run mimics in the world of D&D, they're never this tree is a mimic, this grass is a mimic. It's always this boulder could be a mimic, this treasure chest is a mimic. But we never. So it really holds true to does not take the living organism. It takes something that is considered not living, not alive. But that gets us into a whole abiotic-biotic relationship.
Well, and I think it's trying to catch something. So it wants to look like something that's desired, a treasure chest, or somewhere you want to go or seek shelter, like a doorway it can
Sure.
be, or like you said, a boulder or
A
something.
house in the larger mimics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it is a little different than camouflage. And I do wonder if, like, thinking about the aggressive mimicry, so how does that differentiate? It's like mimicry with something that's also enticing and leading to predation, like eating something. So what are they using for that? I guess treasure, but I wonder if they would ever like open the chest and show the treasure gleaming inside, almost like a lure, right? Like, come get this, or if just the treasure chest is enough by itself.
That's getting back to the anglerfish that Rachel was mentioning earlier with the lures.
It's figuratively and literally a lure
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the light at the end. And what I learned in doing a deeper dive, pun intended, into anglerfish is that they are not creating that bioluminescence. That's a bacteria that lives inside the little area where the light bulb is then illuminated, which is and the
Mutualism.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was. Yeah.
And
So
this goes back to where we're talking about mimics started with just pretty much cave dwelling darkness. They were creatures that lived in the dark. So, yeah, I would agree too, where you have an anglerfish, great, great relation on that too.
And a light is an inanimate object. It's not trying to be a light. It doesn't know what a light bulb is, but
whoa.
it's kind of, it's an inanimate object that it's
So-
seeing.
Are you arguing that mimics are bioluminescent?
No.
But they
I-
could be.
I would
Could
agree
be.
with you on that, Rachel. I think that they absolutely could do
Wow.
bioluminescent. Which,
That is some
yeah,
ecological feat right there.
Well,
Yeah.
are there aquatic mimics, right? So in your
there should be, yeah.
undersea world.
Shipwrecks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Now I'm gonna go in the world of D&D, and I go in the world of biology on this. So we have identify. We have the spell identify or detect magic, somatic and verbal components, right? And so we already know that mimics can, to a point, understand and speak common. So if we have a creature that's casting a spellcaster, one of the various spellcasters in the world of D&D that is casting something like detect magic or identify, right? When that spell is cast, verbal, somatic components. So mimics should understand what's being said and what's being casted, right? So in that world of, my wizard is looking at this gold chest and let me identify and make sure this isn't a trap, or identify or detect magic. Is there any magic in there? And that now, bioluminesce for that extra lore. You've got that wizard that is now detect magic. Oh, I see it lighting up. They're just going to see it light up. They're not necessarily going to know that it's not detect magic. And lures them right on in for the full touch, and now you're grabbed by a mimic.
Whoa. So you're talking like conditioning. Well, I guess it's not totally conditioning.
But
Learn behavior, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Wow.
So that, I think that brings me also back then to the octopi that are using a shell as well. I know this is what this animal looks for, or I know this is going to be protected, like something that's it's making decisions, right?
yeah, and octopus that mimic also will learn from different situations. I should look like this animal now. That will scare this predator away. Or this one didn't work very well, so we should change our method. They do learn.
Chainsaws and cameras. Huh.
You kind of are making me think of I know we've described different types of mimicry in nature, but there's also like real-time mimicry versus just evolved mimicry, where like a stick bug, that's their end game. They look like the stick. But a mimic or octopuses or this those are mimicking as behavior rather than that's an ongoing mimic, which I think is a
Yeah.
fascinating distinction.
Yeah.
They do
And
all
you
the things.
you have those the stick bugs too, that as they go from their larval stage to their adult stage, they change what their body plan is of their, you know, curling up to look more like an ant. And so that's kind of a neat, that's a learned behavior, right?
Yeah,
Where
there's one I came across was the spider-tailed horned viper.
Ooh.
So it's a snake, and the tip of its tail looks like a plump moving spider.
Yeah.
So it sort of blends in with rocks and then it twitches its tail. And when a bird comes down to try and get that spider, it attacks the bird. So I totally want to see a video of that actually. I had two other species I just want to mention that. So one is a bird that came to mind. It's not like a perfect fit with the mimic from Dungeons and Dragons, but it's the Potu.
Yeah,
I think they're
a stick.
they look like a stick. They look like a branch.
They're
Yeah.
super big and floofy, and then they get scared and they go, and they're just a stick.
So it's just for camouflage, but I like it as a tie-in with the mimic from D&D just because it looks like wood. That's essentially the reason I was thinking of that one.
Huh.
And I don't know if you guys also, we've alluded to plants with like orchids that mimic things and attracting would-be pollinators or whatever, but also like the classic Venus flytrap comes to mind a little bit.
Icky.
your sundews, you know, your sundews have that specific real kind of sappy lures to them. Yeah.
Right. I guess because they're plants, they kind of feel, but they do seem pretty much like a good fit. So was there anything else you guys thought of? Because
Animal wise, no, but I do wonder what the mimic actually looks like when it's not mimicking.
That's a good point. I don't
It was like a
really know.
blob.
Yeah, it's a blob.
Yeah,
It's
it's
usually
just like a blob.
like a jelly. It almost not quite because there's jellies, but yeah, it's fairly amorphous, right?
So
So
just
Amoeba?
slides around. All right. It is time to reveal our real world mimic. And it's not something we've already talked about, although we've alluded to this group of organisms. Let me share.
I'm
I'm like so excited.
Can't wait to hear it.
We're all nerds.
Here we go. It's the frogfish.
Yes, I love frogfish. We saw one of these in Bahia last year. We found it, and two of us that were diving saw it, and we just lost our minds at this little tiny frog.
I would imagine. I mean, how did you even see it? They're so
It
well
was sheer
camouflaged.
luck. Sheer luck.
It's gotta be because we have them in the aquarium that's connected to where I work, and I know they're there, and I can't find them sometimes. They're real good at camouflage.
Yeah, and we were like, the current was ripping where we were at, and we were coming back up after a long dive, and it was just tucked away in this little tiny crevice, and I guess it moved a little bit, and we just had a freak out. Yeah.
How big was it, Mike?
It was I mean, it was a fairly decent sized frogfish. So, I mean, they're not, you know.
So yeah, like 6 to 10 inches is what I read, and there's like 50
Yeah.
species of these things. They are fish, right? They are a type of fish. They're called the frogfishes. They sometimes are grouped as like anglerfish or in that because they do have a lure, which is not very clear from the picture I have up on my screen right now. But basically, they're kind of cubicle shaped, which is why it seemed like a good analog to the mimic. They are chunky fish, right? They've kind of given up the fast moving, sleek ways of typical what we think of as a fish, you know, hydrodynamic body shape. And in fact, their fins, their pectoral fins, kind of have evolved to almost look like little hands, little arms that they can kind of crawl along the surface of the sea floor, essentially. So they can camouflage, they can look like algae, they can look like coral, they can look like rocks. but they're just sitting there. And then when they're hungry, they put out their lure and they wiggle it. And it can look like different sea worms. It can look like shrimp and fish, I think, even small fish. But they dangle it and they have special muscles even to move it in unique ways. It's actually, that lure is it's a modified dorsal fin. So it's amazing to think how this could evolve and then even get like musculature to move and such. When something comes close, so they open their mouth and they could open it 12 times the size of like what you see in this picture, like their normal mouth shape, like it opens and just keeps opening. And that actually creates like a vacuum of pressure and kind of just sucks in water and everything around them. And it's one of the fastest bites and gulps in the entire animal kingdom. I think 6 milliseconds. It's really even hard to catch on video when they strike. And then they just swallow the animal whole, and they can swallow things that are really large relative to their body size and somehow like fit it all in.
I think it's a great analog. Jeez. I think
there it is.
it's a great
It's
analog
mouth
to what we're talking about as a mimic in D&D. I think I love it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about the chest opening, that's
Yeah.
probably 12 times as big as its
And it would
buckle
be
for the
quick.
Yeah.
It's faster than a reaction. It's
Right.
not something you're typically reacting to in the world of
Right.
D&D, which is, 1 second,
Oh my God, that fish is nuts.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of like stop sharing there, but like, are there any conservation or education connections we can make about mimics and the various organisms we've been discussing? So I don't know who wants to go first on this.
I'll jump in. We talked a lot about very aquatic species today and ocean dwelling species. And so I know Great Barrier Reef, I believe it's called Reef Watch. I was just trying to look up the address for it because it's saved on my computer and I'm there all the time when I have nothing else to do. It's a citizen science, community science program where you will identify that there is coral, or not to the species, but like a type of coral, like it's a hard coral, it's a soft coral, and the percentage of a photo that has coral in it or other things in it. And it actually really helps scientists out who are trying to learn more about the ocean ecosystem. And so it's a great way to get involved, that you get to do real science, help with real science, and you can do it from your computer at home. And you don't have to be super trained in anything in order to do it. So I always love a citizen science or a community science program like that. Zooniverse also has a lot of really great ones that you can get involved in, and you can mimic a scientist, or really, you could just be one.
I love that. In terms of educational extensions, I really like to use the concept of biomimicry when working with students, which is the idea that when we are engineering real solutions to problems in the real world, we don't need to start from scratch. We can see what already exists in nature, because to exist in nature is to have undergone millions of iterations to be perfect in our environment. So like classic examples are the grooves on wind turbines are built from the bumps on humpback whale fins to make them both aerodynamic. Velcro is another really classic example where this dude was hiking in Australia and he had all these burrs stuck to his socks at the end of the hike, and he thought, wow, that's a really good adhesive. I wonder structurally how it's composed, and I wonder if we could copy that. And so we did, and that's how we have Velcro. That's a really important concept to translate to students, that when we're solving problems, first of all, we're never doing it on our own. We always have people and ideas that we can lean on, but also let's like go out and observe nature a little bit. Let's figure out what adaptations look like. They're already rooted in science standards, in engineering standards, and all the different standards that teachers already need to teach to, but let's solve real world problems using real world solutions. And I often, when working with students, use the UN Sustainable Development Goals kind of as a framework for what types of problems you might want to solve, which also touches on social studies standards. So I'm speaking about ways you can make this type of learning experience happen in different types of classrooms while still connecting kids with nature and solving real problems. And if you want to integrate biomimicry into your classroom, there are actually real competitions that students can submit their work for and be a part of a larger community, just like citizen science with what Cassie was mentioning.
Nice.
Yeah, one of the ways that I really like to integrate a lot of this concepts of mimicry and observation of like what the world is I love to pull out my students into nature and go through nature journaling. What do you observe?
Oh,
What do you
yeah.
see? What do you notice? Right? And why do you think this is a way that it is? So a lot of those ideas branching out, I let them play with watercolors to kind of branch into the colors and textures of things. So they're really, really starting to notice patterns in nature and similarities in nature. And then a really fun idea that I like to do is I give them butterfly cutouts. And with those butterfly cutouts, they design butterflies that could camouflage into the classroom, right? And so one group will come in and they'll put their butterflies where their butterflies go, and they all have to be in plain view. Half the class is outside waiting, and then they get X amount of time to come in and find. So it's really kind of a neat thing we're talking about these concepts of blending in and looking like other things and looking like other objects as far as a mimic goes. We can see how it's working in nature, and then we can also have fun with it and play with it in a game of the mimic got you, or that, which might be fun to do, like the mimic got you, or or what.
The imposter. Who's the imposter? I think there's a game about
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I was just thinking how a lot of these organisms we've been talking about are not like the charismatic megafauna we're used to thinking about with conservation, pandas and things, but we're talking about like, frogfish and octopi and like all these things that a lot of people would see as like icky, but they're so fascinating, right? So like, how do we keep drawing attention to the adaptations that make them so unique and so special and get people excited about them? So great. Well, y'all, it's just about time. So let's wrap up with maybe one fantasy or science thing you're into this week. Let's go first.
We have a massive board game collection, like multiple rooms of like full floor to ceiling board games, but we always pick the same 5 games to play because they're our favorites. So this week, I'm taking spring break with my husband, Jake, and we've started going into our old games, our old favorites that we haven't played in like since before the pandemic, which is already crazy to like just reimagine who you were before the pandemic. That's its own fantasy. But we've been really jonesing on this game called Zolkeen, which is about Mayan civilization. So it's not as much fantasy as it is like history, but I've never seen a game like it before because the game itself, it's a worker placement game. So you're putting different workers on the board and then you're getting resources by taking them back, but you're putting them on the board on these cogs that rotate and the entire board rotates. And it's just the most interesting game I've ever seen. And it feels really like I've never played another game that has that kind of theme, that has that kind of intricacy before. And it's just a really fun hang.
I'm picturing the intro to Game of Thrones with the little turtle
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
castles ring.
But like maybe with not Game of Thrones music.
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, maybe with Game of Thrones music. My bad.
Okay. I've been nerding out at waterfalls lately. That's been my nature nerd out lately for the last couple of weeks. Finding all the local waterfalls and going out to them, icy or not. I had a little hand accident this past weekend. But outside that, I've been doing the same as Rachel, revisiting and playing some of my favorite board games. Wingspan. It is my game. I love Wingspan. And if anyone is looking for that kind of, that bridge of science and strategy game, it's where it's at. And if you want to learn some bird facts, it's got some great facts.
Have you played
Right.
Finspan?
I have Finspan. I also have Wormspan.
Gotta have Wormspan.
Mike, you should also, I think you explained your costume before we started recording. So
Yeah, so I'm piecing together a Legend of Zelda cosplay. I'm doing a Link cosplay, but I'm not doing the traditional Link. I'm doing the war tattered, has battled Ganon, has seen some things Link, which is showing up a little bit more and more every episode, I guess.
Tune in next week for the next.
Tune in, yeah.
We're not even going to see your face by the end of the last episode. Full chainmail, helmet.
Be great. This is a real nerdy sentence. One of my friends came up with a fitness D&D game that we all play together. He has it all like set up where each of us has a character and each of our characters has a different class, and so we have different types of roles and things that we can do. But essentially you have to, when you work out for 30 minutes or more in a day, then you can roll. And if you don't, then you don't roll. And if you don't roll for more than 5 days in a row, then you start losing HP. But so you roll when you work out, and then your roll essentially tells you if you hit the monster. There's a monster each month that we're trying to defeat all together. And yeah, so you roll, you hit the monster, and then you have another roll that tells you how much damage you do or not. So you have to work out every day, and it's like really encouraging for a lot of people who don't. And then maybe you're like me, and I every like 5 to 6 days a week I'm rolling, but I don't always hit the monster, and that's real discouraging. It's like, it was a great workout and I didn't hit the monster.
10 more push-ups.
Yeah. More push-ups. But it's a lot, yeah, it's a lot of fun. And as you survive each month, you level up, and then you get to roll an additional to try to help you hit the monster each time.
That's super awesome. I can't really compete with that, but I finished finally The Dinosaurs narrated by Morgan Freeman, and I kid you not, I loved this. It's like a 4 or 6 part documentary. It's directed by Steven Spielberg, and it tells the story of the dinosaurs. And I'm sorry, it got me on. I was like oddly emotional for the dinosaurs.
Dude, understandably, they got the
oh man,
they
when
got
the
wrapped.
asteroids coming, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh no, and they like even well, I don't want to give away spoilers.
I think we kind of,
Yeah.
I mean,
65 million years later. Don't spoil it.
you're not spoiling the Titanic. I don't think this is being
True. True, but you start to feel for these creatures and like how long they were like millions of years, humans, like we've been around, like Homo sapiens, like 200,000 years, right? Like these things were around for like 60 plus million years, right? Like some of them went extinct and other ones came out, but like it's just crazy to me that, and then just by chance that their reign ended, which had allowed us to eventually enter the scene. So that's what I've been into. Well, guys, thanks as always for another fun discussion.
Yeah, this was
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you.
All right, folks, with that, we are officially closing the heavy iron lid on today's encounter. We survived our delve into the science and fantasy, proving once again that the real world is magic too. Please take a moment to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And until next time, keep your perception checks high and enjoy learning about all the fascinating real world mimics out there. Stay wild, adventurers.